Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 13th chapter. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I finish my work. Yet today and tomorrow and the next day, I must be on my way because it's impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often I have desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you, and I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Praise to you, O Christ. So do you have that place? That place where you go and your spirit feels at home. The place where you know the contours of the corners, where your soul breathes and rests. The place where your story just seems to be written into it. Maybe it's your local congregation. Maybe it's your grandmother's front porch. Maybe it's the oak tree in a park, or the feel of sand and ocean waters on your toes. It's a place that no matter what journey takes you, no matter what road or swerve or life interruption, your life, maybe your spirit, still circles around it. Your stories forever intertwined. Well, Jerusalem is that place to Jesus's life. Jerusalem is that place not where Jesus was born, but that Jesus's life circled around. He was dedicated in that temple. When he was lost, his parents found him teaching, proclaiming this gospel of liberation in Jerusalem. And then when he encounters the devil in the wilderness, just before his public ministry begins, Jerusalem is part of the temptation. Jesus's life circles around it. Then in chapter 9 of Luke, we encounter Jesus setting his face to Jerusalem. Setting his face. It's no more evident than it is in the Gospel of Luke. In fact, the author of Luke Acts names Jerusalem 90 times. The rest of the New Testament only mentions it 50. It's clear that Jerusalem weaves and circles and intertwines into Jesus' story. And although Jesus has been part of God's mission in the world, healing and casting out demons, now the mission crystallizes. Jerusalem, 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 the center of the Jewish world. Jerusalem, it's in this place where Jesus was dedicated that Jesus would also be crucified. And it's in this place that the mission of God opens the way of love and everlasting life, the way of relationship to all of humanity. And Herod is having none of it. You see, this upstart prophet, this Jesus, is wrecking his vibe, his power, making him feel uncomfortable. All this human liberation is getting in the way of Roman occupation. And the Pharisees, it's weird, it's them, right? Come to warn him, go to another place. Herod is after you anywhere but Jerusalem. But it's clear that Jesus's journey, albeit indirect, would not be deterred. Go tell that fox, I'm on a mission from God. Commentator James Burns shares, Jesus doesn't respond with threats of violence or fear. His connection with his mission is so clear that even a predatory fox like the king can be ignored. I'm doing what God has called me to do, he says. healing today, exercising tomorrow, and finishing on the third day. Jesus is on a mission from God, and nothing can deter him. Beloved, can we just stop there for a moment and give thanks for a God whose love is so persistent, for a God whose primary goal was always to open arms to all of humanity, like a mother hen, like the outstretched arms on the cross? Y'all, I don't know about you, but I can be deterred. I can run when it gets hard. I can stop when my spirit starts feeling anxious or uncomfortable. And yet God is undeterred. God in Jesus Christ is on the move. Now, you might be tempted to misunderstand this sermon, to think that the message that I'm going to give you today is to persevere, to ignore the haters, to just keep going regardless of violence or threats or fear. And perhaps, beloved, God has put something so deep in your heart that that is the message. And yet for most of us this day, I think the message isn't just to try harder or do more or persevere. I think the message for us in this time and space is that God already has. God already has persevered. God has already looked Herod in the face and said, "You are not the end of this story." God has already overcome execution on a cross and said, "You are not the end of this story." God has already looked upon every one of our worst things and said, you are not the end of the story. And beloved, maybe that's what you need to hear today, that your God has already persisted. Your story is still being written out of ashes, right? Out of the dust of our very humanity, written out of dashed dreams, written out of exhausted best intentions. Beloved, God already has. God has persevered, not so that we can just pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and try harder. But God in Jesus set his face to Jerusalem so that we could turn our face to our neighbor and offer love. God in Jesus set his face to Jerusalem so that we could gather in like a mother so loved, so that we could turn and gather in God's own beloveds. God in Jesus set his face to Jerusalem so that we could set our faces, not simply in the war beyond our border, but in the love that shows up as strollers at a bus station, waiting for a Ukrainian refugee mama. Full disclosure, beloveds. I read this text this week and thought, what the heck does this one even mean? And I ended in a place that felt tender, like that mother hen. A place where we were gathered in again to hear Jesus say, "I love you. I have already persisted. I have taken on every empire and oppressor so that you may know that you are beloved." Maybe this is the kind of text we need in Lent, when we're hearing hard truths, like you are dust, and to dust you shall return. When we're naming wilderness places, when we're leaning into the shadows, maybe we need the reminder that our God is undeterred on our behalf, and not only moving towards the cross, but in that very same moment, being a mother, gathering us in, saying, "You are my beloved." Gregory of Nyssa, an early church father, was credited with saying, "How fitting it is for God to die with arms wide open. For how else could he have embraced the world?" Beloved, Herod, the cross, would not deter the love and welcome and arm embrace of our God. So may we too be undeterred in our love. May we know that we don't have to do it alone or by our bootstraps or even by just trying harder. May we know there are days that God embraces us. And then out of that deep embrace, like a mama hen sends off her chicks, we too are sent off to love this world. And maybe our lives will always circle around a place like it did for Jesus in Jerusalem. But the gift of this day is whatever that place holds. Stories of hurt, stories of fear, stories of hope. God can hold them all and whispers in the midst, "You are my beloved." And for that we say thanks be to God. Amen.